Good morning and welcome. The 2025 Inter-Service Industry Training, Simulation, and Education Conference is now called to order. I'm Ann Little with SAIC, and for the past year, it has been my privilege and my honor to serve as your conference chair. On behalf of the Honorable David Norquist, Vice Admiral Sean Buck, and our lead service, the Department of the Air Force, including the inaugural representation by the United States Space Force and the entire conference committee, I welcome you to the 59th anniversary of the largest modeling, simulation, training, and education event in the world, Itsec 2025. Joining me on stage are our U.S. Air Force and U.S. Space Force executives, Mr. Rodney Stevens and Colonel Corey Klopstein. Mr. Stevens, a member of the Senior Executive Service, serves as the Program Executive Officer for the Training Directorate. He leads more than 1,500 personnel and manages a budget exceeding $7.4 billion. Colonel Klopstein is Program Executive Officer, Operational Test and Training Infrastructure, Space Systems Command, Los Angeles Air Force Base, California. Colonel Klopstein leads a combined team of military, government civilians, and contractors at 2 geographically separated units in the execution of a portfolio of more than $4 billion. Gentlemen, all of us value your presence and commitment to this community and to this conference. At this time, we ask Colonel Klopstein to come forward for the presentation of the colors. Immediately following will be our national anthem, sung by Cooper LaBelle, a cadet in the Civil Air Patrol, U.S. Air Force Auxiliary, and an invocation will be offered by retired Air Force Colonel Jesse Citizen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. Color Guard, present the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we've hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we've watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air gave a proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning. Please join me in today's invocation. Almighty Father, we are gathered here from across the globe, united in purpose to serve and support our operators and warfighters. We are grateful for the opportunity to participate in this year's Inter-Service Industry Simulation and Education Conference. We recognize that it is not by chance that we are here today, dedicated to the critical mission of optimizing training and ensuring operational dominance. We are thankful for the sacrifice that many have made to be here this week amidst the various global challenges we face, and ask blessings for each of the individuals in this room and those traveling from around the globe to join us. We are humbled by the dedication of those whose diligent efforts have ensured the success of this great convening for 59 years. Since its inception, the common goal has been to promote cooperation in pursuit of training and simulation. We are humbled by the unwavering dedication to the National Defense Industry Association and the National Training Simulation Association staff, Itsec conference and program chairs and executive staff, and the international military industry and academic partners, and all those involved in the subcommittees. We are particularly grateful for the leadership of this year's leads, the Air Force and Space Force Senior Executive Service and its military leaders. We pray for continued wisdom from our President, the members of Congress, world leaders, the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, and federal employees. Grant your protection for those serving here at home and abroad. Dear Lord, we are thankful, grateful for Itsec, one of the largest events that bring together so many diverse, multidisciplinary, and remarkable people. Lord of wisdom, we ask you work mightily in us today and throughout this week to continue to share focus on delivering the most effective training, modeling, and simulation solution to those who we serve. May this conference be a source of inspiration, motivation, igniting our passion for innovation and excellence in the pursuit of operational dominance. May we leave feeling empowered to make lasting impact on the world around us. Amen.
Please be seated. And thank you to the Marine Corps Color Guard, to Jesse and Cooper. Thank you for sharing your talents with us. It is now my privilege to welcome both active and retired general and flag officers, esteemed members of Congress, and representatives of allied nations. I also recognize a few of our distinguished guests. But please note the general and flag officers for this morning's senior leader panel will be introduced during that event. Our government keynote speakers, the Honorable Michael Duffy, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, Mr. William Bailey, Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, and Major General James Smith, Commander, Space Training and Readiness Command. Our industry keynote speaker, Mr. Bob Ritchie, Senior Vice President and Chief Growth Officer of SAIC. And our additional service executives, first from the Army, Brigadier General Christine Beeler, Program Executive Officer, Simulation Training Instrumentation, and the U.S. Army Principal, Ms. Debbie Dawson. The Navy Executive, Captain Rob Betts, Commanding Officer, Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division, and his principal, Mr. Matt Williams. From the Marines, Colonel Wendy Young, Program Manager, Training Systems, and her principal, Mr. Mike Lamorta. And from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Army Lieutenant Colonel Paul Kunis, Chief of the Joint Staff of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, serves as our OSD executive, and the OSD principal is Ms. Gina Tyrell. Welcome, distinguished guests. I now direct your attention to this year's theme video.
Welcome to Tomorrow's Operational Dominance. The commitment to sharpening our training systems, accelerating innovation, and preparing warfighters to excel across every domain starts here. Through cutting-edge simulation, immersive technologies, and data-driven insight, we ensure our forces remain ready, resilient, and unmistakably dominant.
From this moment forward, the only mission of the newly restored Department of War is this: warfighting. Preparing for war and preparing to win. Unrelenting and uncompromising in that pursuit. Not because we want war, but it's because we love peace. We love peace for our fellow citizens. They deserve peace, and they rightfully expect us to deliver it.
Together, we stand at a threshold of a new era where readiness is constant, innovation is relentless, and dominance is the expectation. Guided by ever-advancing training and technology, welcome to Itsec 2025, where the evolution of operational dominance continues.
Optimizing training, ensuring operational dominance.
Many thanks to the Department of the Air Force for that wonderful video. You can clap. I now turn things over to our lead service executives, Mr. Stevens, and Colonel Glopstein.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Good morning, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, and partners from around the globe. It's an honor to be here in partnership with my teammate from the United States Space Force, Colonel Corey Klopstein. Thank you to NTSA, Vice Admiral Buck, Debbie Langelier, and the entire NTSA team for orchestrating this remarkable gathering. These collaborative events demonstrate a fundamental truth. When we work together, we can accomplish anything. Our newest Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Wilsbach, recently stated in his letter to the force, "Readiness is our responsibility. Aircraft availability, aircrew proficiency, and the ability to generate combat power at scale are not just metrics. They are the measure of our credibility as a fighting force. We know that without readiness, there is no credibility. Without credibility, there is no deterrence. And without deterrence, there is no peace. Those who long for peace must prepare for war, an ancient concept still true today. And as General Wilsbach noted, our airmen must fly, fix, and train with purpose, realism, and discipline to ensure we are ready at any time our nation's call. Our current security environment is characterized by intensifying strategic competition with capable adversaries who are coordinating efforts and sharing technology, presenting us with simultaneously multi-domain conflicts. Those with us here today, the Defense Industrial Base, academic partners, and our international allies are our strategic advantage. Collectively, you deliver the advanced tools, groundbreaking research, and the diverse expertise required to translate superior training into the decisive operational dominance required to defend the nation. Our adversaries know this, and we do not deter without you. This year's conference theme is Optimized Training, Ensuring Operational Dominance. And to be clear, this isn't intended to be a catchphrase, rather how we grade ourselves on our abilities to deliver the right capabilities at the time of need to our warfighting teammates, guaranteeing them the dominance in the battle space. Today's readiness environment demands cognitive mastery of complex multi-domain operations. The advancement of modeling and simulation methods and technologies allow our forces to experience uncertainty within the complex, high-stake arena of military conflict at master cutting-edge weapon systems, all without the cost of actual conflict. Training demands strategic focus on aligning critical skills with the evolving technologies and platforms provided by industry partners, innovation adoption of advanced tools like artificial intelligence, simulation, and virtual reality to accelerate learning and enhance decision-making and continuous improvement to keep pace with emerging threats and next-generation capabilities. Advanced training simulators have become the cornerstone of military readiness. The Air Force is pursuing comprehensive modernizations of multi-domain systems, spanning platforms, communications, and weapons to create robust, long-range kill webs while aligning training to prepare forces for contested environments and seamless allied integration. Central to this effort are the Simulator Common Architecture Requirements and Standards, known as the SCARS Initiative, which replaces legacy stovepipe simulators with a modular, open, cyber-resilient architecture enabling integrated training across platforms like the F-16, F-22, KC-135, and C-17, with other planned in the future. Additionally, the Air Force is pursuing the Joint Simulation Environment, a government-owned, physics-based virtual battle space that delivers high-fidelity, cost-effective preparation for complex, peer-level conflicts without the limitations of live ranges. Together, these programs mark a fundamental shift from isolated platform training to true joint multi-domain readiness. Ensuring operational dominance requires integrated advanced training with cutting-edge technology, continuously reinforced in a dynamic security environment due to capable adversaries that demand unrelenting adaptation from our industry, academic, and international partners. To that end, through advanced modeling and simulation, we can rehearse scenarios that our adversaries, that our adversaries cannot imagine, practice responses to threats they don't anticipate, and develop tactics that turn any numerical advantage that they may have into a strategic vulnerability. The success of those tactics, the Air Force depends on collaborative approach, leveraging expertise from across the Department of the Air Force and industry. A key leadership in that effort is my boss, Mr. William Bailey, the Air Force Keynote in the upcoming Fireside chat. He is from the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisitions, Technology, and Logistics, also known as SAF-AQ. Mr. Bailey is deeply involved in the acquisition strategies that drive the development and deployment of cutting-edge Air Force capabilities and training programs. He oversees an Air Force research and development, test production, and modernization program portfolio of over $60 billion annually. I believe his perspective on fostering innovation through effective acquisitions is invaluable to the Air Force and this Itsec audience. So in closing, and before I hand it off to my teammate, Colonel Klopstein, it's imperative we work together to make this vision our shared reality by embracing the theme, optimizing training to ensure operational dominance. The training systems and technologies being showcased at Itsec this week don't just prepare our forces, they multiply our deterrent effects, making our adversaries think twice before testing our resolve. Thank you for your partnership, and with you, I look forward to making the conference a resounding success.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Good morning. Distinguished guests, industry leaders, defense professionals, and friends, it's incredibly exciting for the Space Force to partner with Mr. Stevens and the Air Force as an Itsec co-lead for the very first time. I want to start by expressing my sincere gratitude to NDIA and NTSA, Vice Admiral Buck, Dr. Andy Little, Dr. Kelly Hale, Ms. Debbie Langelier, the entire NTSA team. There are a lot of you behind the scenes even. Thank you for orchestrating this remarkable event. These forums are catalysts for the partnerships that we need to advance one of Secretary Hegseth's key outcomes of acquisition reform: field technology and modernized systems at a rate that outpaces our adversaries. This year's theme, optimizing training and ensuring operational dominance, aligns perfectly with the objectives of the Space Force. as we look to strengthen our operational capabilities in the rapidly evolving and highly contested space domain. Space is no longer just a strategic high ground. It is a critical warfighting domain that is as dynamic as land, sea, air, and cyber. Adversaries are taking deliberate actions to challenge our dominance and disrupt operations in space. I've been working on space systems for a long time, you can probably tell by the hairdo, and we're witnessing threats that are beyond jamming, spoofing, and other disruptive measures we've previously seen. In this new reality of space as a warfighting domain, we have to prepare and deliver combat-ready forces that can deter conflicts, defend national interests, and operate decisively if deterrence fails. Put simply, the United States Space Force is laser-focused on one central mission: secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. Optimizing training and leveraging modeling and simulation capabilities is essential to the operational dominance required in space. Realistic, adaptive training environments are vital to push the boundaries of the possible, both for operational systems and those in development. To meet this demand, Space Systems Command partnered closely with Space Training and Readiness Command, also known as STARCOM, and Combat Forces Command, is leading the charge to deliver combat-credible, ready, and resilient space capabilities. Together, we're modernizing our training frameworks with live, virtual, and constructive environments. Our focus on LVC capabilities for the space domain also extends to and impacts mission partners. Space capabilities are not isolated. The ability to execute seamlessly with a joint force is critical to mission success. One collaboration we're proud of is our work with the Joint Simulation Environment Team. Together, we're incorporating space effects into broader joint training exercises, which will help simulate degraded environments that joint operators face in combat operations. Achieving the Space Force's mission while integrating with the Joint Force requires us to push boundaries in how capabilities are developed and delivered. The Secretary of Air Force has made it clear: we must accelerate everything we do, from concept to execution. Our Chief of Space Operations emphasizes that acquisitions isn't merely a support activity, it's a warfighting imperative. That is our mentality. As a result, the Space Force is prioritizing new acquisition approaches to advance the space capabilities needed to achieve operational dominance. We're accessing the commercial space market and opening the requirements trade space to enable speed of capability delivery. For example, Space Systems Command recently worked shoulder to shoulder with STARCOM's Delta 11 to refine specifications and rapidly award a contract that leverages on-orbit commercial assets via the Space Enterprise Consortium. Unity of effort, coupled with commercial market exploitation, enables us to stay ahead of our adversaries. Additionally, our teams are expanding the use of commercial solutions openings, other transaction authorities, and software acquisition pathways to move faster and with more agility. Specifically for training and modeling and simulation, over this past year, OTTI has created a commercial solutions opening with a recent contract award for enhancements to our distributed training environment. We leveraged the Space Enterprise Consortium, OTA, for range control system development, and we declared a software acquisition pathway for our digital environment development. The Space Force is applying these tools across all of its mission areas, allowing us to reduce traditional development timelines, adopt cutting-edge technologies, and quickly respond to the evolving needs of our Guardians. One Space Force leader at the forefront of training for our Guardians is Major General James Smith, who you'll hear from in the second Itsec Fireside chat today. General Smith is the commander, Space Training and Readiness Command, which is headquartered just down the road at Patrick Space Force Base. As commander, he's responsible for preparing the more than 14,000 military and civilian Guardians to prevail in conflict through innovation, education, training, doctrine, and test activities. Major General Smith's career spans numerous space operations and acquisition positions, including command at the squadron, group, wing, garrison, and field command levels. He is the ideal representative of our Space Force for Itsec, and we look forward to hearing his thoughts later this morning. So as I conclude, I have one request to all of you. There are a lot of Guardians that are here. They'll be out on the exhibition floor. They'll be at the panels. They'll be at the presentations. Please approach them, talk to them, introduce yourself, ask them about our service. They'll be glad to engage with you. They want to share our message. So let's use this week, on behalf of the United States Space Force, I thank you for the commitment. Let's use this week to inspire one another, foster new partnerships, and take bold steps towards shaping the future of global security. Thank you. Semper Supra.
Thank you. We're pleased to welcome the Honorable David Norquist to the stage for our first and virtual fireside chat with the Honorable Michael Duffy, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. Thanks to the Pentagon's PA team and our fabulous on-site tech team, we're able to bring senior leaders together to share important insights, even when schedules keep us in different places. And while we all know that technology can occasionally be a bit uncooperative, thank you, every single COVID virtual event, we're confident that today's technology will support a smooth conversation and allow us to fully benefit from the perspectives of our distinguished leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable David Norquist.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Honorable Mike Duffy, the Undersecretary of War for Acquisition and Sustainment. And Secretary Duffy, they have you much larger than me, so the scale is proportionate to our authorities. He oversees the department's acquisition, sustainment, logistics, and industrial-based enterprise, and is leading a historic modernization effort to ensure our warfighters receive the capabilities they need at the speed of relevance. Undersecretary Duffy is the architect of the department's new acquisition transformation strategy, which is revitalizing the arsenal of freedom, empowering the acquisition workforce, expanding competition, and strengthening partnerships with industry across every tier of the defense industrial base. His leadership is helping put the industrial base on a true wartime footing while opening doors for innovation, commercial capability, and private sector investment. We will first hear from the Honorable Duffy, and then he and I will engage in some Q&A. So now, please join me in welcoming a leader driving meaningful change across the department, Undersecretary Michael Duffy.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, David, for the invitation to speak to this gathering of so many of our talented industry and government professionals. It's a privilege to join you all today and share with you some insights into where our focus is within the Pentagon. I'm excited to share with everyone that there is widespread dedication within our leadership ranks to focus on leveraging the talent and innovation in our government and acquisition workforce and our private sector to accelerate the delivery of advanced weapons and systems to our men and women in uniform. Secretary Hegseth has outlined for our leadership in the Pentagon his three priorities. Number one, restore the warrior ethos. Number two, rebuild the military. And number three, reestablish deterrence. Our acquisition workforce is leading the charge on priority two, rebuilding the military, as Secretary Hegseth outlined in his acquisition transformation speech 3 weeks ago. We're delivering on his vision by instilling the urgency of the warrior ethos in the acquisition workforce, empowering our acquisition professionals with the flexibility, authority, and accountability they need to deliver superior solutions to the warfighter on schedule. This focus on speed and battlefield dominance will be decisive on the battlefield and a critical enabler of the Secretary's imperative to reestablish deterrence. A modern and flexible acquisition system is central to successfully implementing the Secretary's priorities by equipping our joint force with the weapons and systems needed to protect American interests and freedoms. If you look closely, you will find there is widespread recognition of this when you examine the unprecedented support and alignment across so many stakeholders in our federal government to transform the acquisition system. From the multiple executive orders issued by the White House this spring to the bipartisan, bicameral legislation working through Congress, directing reforms to our system, to the disruptive and change-oriented leaders in the E-Ring and the West Wing, to the significant investments we are seeing from venture capital and private sector to boost innovation, production, and supply chain resilience. We find ourselves today in a unique moment to drive change and create an acquisition system that is truly responsive to the needs of the warfighter, an enabler of military superiority and not a bureaucratic drag on our forward progress. This unique moment motivated Secretary Hegseth's release of the Acquisition Transformation Strategy last month, and the positive momentum we are harnessing to drive key changes throughout our acquisition system. For too long, the Department of War has relied on outdated acquisition processes that have stifled innovation and delayed the delivery of critical capabilities. As unveiled in his Arsenal of Freedom speech last month, we in A&S and stakeholders across the department are undertaking an aggressive systemic overhaul to modernize our requirements process, accelerate acquisition, and improve our foreign military sales system across the entire department. These initiatives are not just about streamlining process, they represent a fundamental shift in mindset. We are adopting a warfighting acquisition system that aligns urgency with rigor, balances speed with smart execution, and ensures we rapidly deliver relevant and effective solutions at scale to address warfighting needs. The old system of JSIDS was focused on defining systems requirements, staffing them through countless oversight boards, and locking them down while threats and technologies continue to evolve. That's why we are fundamentally reforming our requirements process and enabling the decision space to go with an 85% solution today over the 100% solution that may be years away. As Secretary Hegseth said, in the new system, speed replaces process, money follows need, joint problems drive action, experimentation accelerates delivery, and the services move faster and smarter. It's time to focus on the warfighter's most pressing needs, to empower rapid experimentation and prototyping, and to ensure that money flows to the most promising solutions. The willingness to take calculated risk in making trade-offs requires a shift in how we train our acquisition professionals. That brings me to acquisition reform, where our strategy is organized into 5 pillars. And if you haven't had a chance to review it, I recommend you check it out on the department's website. Those 5 pillars are industry, acquisition workforce, streamlined process, technical excellence, and lifecycle sustainment. Our strategy is aggressive, outlining over 35 unique initiatives to dramatically improve how we operate. First, in industry. Industry partnership is core to our success. We couldn't deliver what we need to without a strong and enduring partnership with industry. Among the initiatives within our industry pillar are a stabilization of demand signals, an increase of competition, and the creation of the bond program, which we call the Business Operatives for National Defense, leveraging the nation's best experts to partner with industry from the government to improve our production capacity and accelerate our delivery. The second pillar is the acquisition workforce. Among the many initiatives, we are prioritizing the portfolio acquisition executive, which is an elevation of our program leadership to ensure they've got the flexibility and authority to trade requirements, to move resources, and to have in a consolidated management team all the acquisition disciplines that are singularly focused on delivering a capability on schedule to the warfighter. We're also focused on transforming the Defense Acquisition University into the Warfighting Acquisition University, where we will drive change from a culture of compliance to a culture of speed and execution, focused on modern training methodologies that will emphasize immersive, scenario-based experiential learning and developing portfolio management competencies. The third pillar is our flexible process, where we will do a complete review and streamlining of the DFARS and FARS in partnership with our counterparts in Office of Management and Budget. Our fourth pillar is focused on technical excellence, where we'll develop and establish the wartime production unit, taking those individuals I mentioned in the bond program, where we find the nation's best manufacturing experts in partnership with industry to modernize how our defense industrial base it manufactures and produces the most exquisite capabilities the nation has to offer. And finally, our fifth pillar is life cycle sustainment, where we will focus on finding the right policy for technical data rights, building out the resilience of our supply chain, and prioritizing sustainability in the design of our weapon systems. As I've outlined, our acquisition strategy has several initiatives focused on testing and modeling, recognizing the need for modernized testing infrastructure, reducing bloated oversight, and increasing the number of actual testers and test capacity. This includes resourcing and empowering the Test Resource Management Center to provide the digital infrastructure required to accelerate and optimize access to and use of testing proving grounds, and implementing greater systems-to-systems integration testing across capability portfolios and mission threads to optimize the performance of systems. This is where you, the modeling, simulation, and training community, can help us with implementation. Your work is absolutely crucial to this entire transformation. Your innovative solutions enable us to test and validate new technologies in a virtual environment, reducing risk and accelerating development cycles. By using advanced models, tooling, and equipment, we can develop, test, and build our weapon systems better and faster. We can develop more effective training programs that prepare our warfighters for the complexities of modern warfare, giving them the edge they need to succeed. And we can leverage modern systems engineering to improve integration, test, and management of systems throughout their life cycle. In short, those of you in this audience are key to helping us to build a more agile, responsive, effective acquisition system. I know that many of you have been working on these challenges for many years, and I want to thank you for your dedication and commitment to keeping us on the leading edge of innovation. We need your continued expertise, your innovative ideas, and your willingness to challenge the status quo. Let's work together to build the arsenal of freedom and ensure our warfighters have the tools and training they need to defend our nation and deter our adversaries. David, thank you again for the opportunity to have to provide some remarks, and I look forward to the discussion.
So thank you, Secretary Duffy, for those opening remarks. So before we go into the details of the acquisition transformation strategy, can you start by just walking us through the why? Why the need for change, and why is this such a priority for this administration?
That's a great question. Thank you for the question. I think a number of factors. Number one, clearly the security environment globally, everybody's aware, has deteriorated, and there's greater need for us to focus on how are we providing the weapon systems, not only to the U.S., but to our partners and allies. I'd mentioned briefly that we're focused on reforming FMS, and so this is kind of looking at the global picture of demand for our capability and ensuring that we can establish and execute a system that can meet those needs, which we see as considerably, with considerable growth in the near future.
So the strategy emphasizes expanding the industrial base and attracting new entrants. However, many companies, particularly small and medium-sized businesses, find the initial hurdles of navigating the Department of War acquisition regulations and processes daunting. So what specific steps is the department taking with this strategy to lower the barriers to entry and ensure a level playing field to include both small and non-traditional defense contractors?
I think certainly small business and medium-sized businesses are critical to the success of our defense industrial base. One of the initiatives in our strategy is to create or leverage existing defense industrial base consortiums that would provide access to government acquisition teams to ensure that we've got visibility from the government side on the broadest range of technologies available to from the innovators within our industry. And secondly, I mentioned the pillar on flexible process. I only mentioned one or two initiatives in there. There are several, I think close to a dozen, that are really focused on how do we reduce the barriers that would obstruct the ability for small, really all business, but hopefully an outsized benefit to small and medium-sized businesses to do business with the federal, with the Pentagon. And I think, I'll just mention a couple. One, in the past, we've had onerous cost accounting standards that can add business cost and burden to small and mid-sized businesses. Our team is taking a hard look at how we could reduce the burden of that requirement. A second thing I'd highlight is, I mentioned the requirements process, and our as the Secretary outlined last week, basically cancellation of the JSIDS process. Mm-hmm. It's our intent that by creating greater flexibility in the requirements process and intentionally looking to provide as broad a problem statement as possible, we invite innovation that might come from non-traditional companies that have outside-the-box thinking about how we can better address the needs of the warfighter in bringing technology to the battlefield.
So related to the comments you made about the change in requirements, is the acquisition transformation strategy embodies a new vision for how portfolio acquisition executives and the PMs should function in the future. Talking to those, did we lose our screen? Somebody give me a thumbs up if we can still have comms.
Can you still hear me, David?
I can still hear you. All right, so we're going to keep going. We have audio, but we don't have visual, but I'll keep rolling. So there you go, you're back. The acquisition transformation strategy embodies a new vision for how the portfolio acquisition executives and the PMs should function in the future. Talking to those future PAEs and PMs who are in the audience right now, how do you see their job being different a year from now?
It's, the philosophy here is there's such great innovation, entrepreneurship, talent, not only within industry, but within our government acquisition workforce. How do we empower our leaders at the program level, at the practitioner level, with the maximum amount of flexibility and authority that they need to singularly focus on delivering capability to the warfighter on schedule? And that would include, and some of this will require engagement with Congress to ensure we can secure the kind of authority and flexibility that we're looking for. Not all of this is within our power to authorize, but to the extent we can grant maximum flexibility to trade requirements. If, for example, in the course of developing a system, we discover that getting to that maximum requirement becomes schedule prohibitive. Empowering that PAE or that PM to be able to make a trade where it's feasible to reduce the requirement in order to make sure we're delivering on schedule. That will require a conversation with leadership in some cases. Mm-hmm. And we'll establish thresholds as we develop this process to define where PAEs and PMs, but I think it's really just comes down to sound professional judgment. Mm-hmm. Is this something in partnership with the operational community that we view as something that we could trade in order to make sure that we stay on schedule? And is the trade to stay on schedule more meaningful and impactful than making sure that we meet that full requirement? By the same token, to the extent we can maximize the ability to reallocate resources to respond, for example, to an unanticipated need or to an emergent technology or to an evolving threat, to ensure that our acquisition system is directly responsive to achieving the mission, as opposed to staying locked into a system that takes 2 to 3 years to refresh. As you know well, David, from your leadership in the Comptroller and the Deputy Secretary's office, having that maximum flexibility, I think will be really empowering to help us make sure that our acquisition system is responsive to the needs of the warfighter.
Got it, excellent. Events like Itsec, the one that we're down here today for, are designed to facilitate the interaction between government and industry so government can identify the problems they are trying to solve and industry can bring forward new solutions and new ideas and innovations. As you are the lead in the department for that intersection between government and industry, how important to you is that regular government and industry engagement, and what do you want people to get out of it?
Well, David, thank you for NDIA's leadership in this function. I can say many years ago when I worked in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Technology and Logistics, I had regular engagement with the systems engineering directorate within NDIA, where we did the same sort of thing. We brought problems to industry, and we had a forum where we could collaboratively work with industry to identify what potential solutions we might be able to bring. In that case, we were working on how do we bring systems engineering earlier into the requirements process to ensure we had knowledge of the technology that was available and the constraints that we would face in developing technologies that would meet the requirement that we were considering. I think that's just a great example of how, you know, the fundamental element of this transformation, I think, is a appropriate but close and collaborative relationship with industry. With the Deputy Secretary's leadership over the last several months, we've led an munitions effort where we've had regular engagement with industry, and I think that communication has been key to ensuring that we understand what's in the art of the possible from industry's perspective to expand production capacity for munitions, and I think that would be applicable across all portfolios and platforms as we look at how do we need to expand the industrial base. And so I think Itsec is a great another example of, you know, I mentioned in my remarks the need for modeling, simulation, and training. And I think a lot of what I learned from my experience in systems engineering and where we can take digitization of our acquisition system, I think is central to what this division at NDIA can help us with. I know, for example, with the F-47, there's tremendous progress that we've made on how do we digitally engineer and develop the system in partnership between government and industry, and that digitization enabling a much more rapid process to iterate on design, to address design questions and issues, and ultimately deliver the capability more rapidly and a better product at the end of the day.
So, Itsec, you brought up some of the initiatives, particularly with regard to munitions, and one of the things they're tied to in the strategy is stabilizing the demand signal through long-term deals. This is a tremendous value, of course, to both government and industry in planning, but in practice, program funding is subject to annual budget cycles, shifting priorities. We've seen the disruptions from Congress on the CRs and shutdowns. How can industry understand and have confidence in these long-term commitments that they'll be protected from the year-to-year fluctuations, enabling them to make the capital investments that you're looking for?
That's a great question. So I think certainly we've heard industry suggest that a long-term demand signal is required in order to justify industry's investment in the expansion of their production capacity. And that's really where we see tremendous benefit. I think the government has gotten into the bad habit of supporting industry by expanding their facilitization and production capacity. And it doesn't, that sort of a relationship doesn't really bode well for optimizing how we produce and manufacture. And so it won't be the case in every scenario. There are scenarios where maximized competition or immature designs may not lead to an optimal scenario where we would create a long-term demand signal. But we're working with Congress right now in a few use cases where we do know that we need a solution. We need it quickly and we need it in greater volume, munitions in particular. And so we're working through, yes, we continue to have annual appropriations, but we're working through the flexibilities that we might be able to leverage through multi-year procurements to provide greater demand signal over time that would help to justify greater investment from the private sector on expanding their production capacity.
So related to getting that capital investment, one of the components of the transformation strategy is to accelerate private capital investment. You've been talking a little bit about that. How will you leverage the potential of bringing private capital investment to the industrial base?
I think, you know, the industrial base can expand in multiple dimensions. The two that are most apparent to me are innovation and production. We've seen a lot of private capital investment recently in innovation, and I think that's part of what's motivated this acquisition strategy is how do we better leverage and create opportunity for promising technologies that have been privately funded to have an opportunity to enter into our ecosystem When it comes to production, I think that's where we're looking for, potential opportunities to better leverage private sector investment. Because as I mentioned, of course, we do have a generous budget, but every dollar spoken for, again, as you know, David, in that budget. And so to the extent we can extend the purchasing power of the Pentagon by getting private sector investment to expand production capacity, and what are the trade-offs that we would make in the appropriate circumstances, as we just talked about, creating a demand signal that gives some assurance that there will be a market for a particular product or service over time, I think creates the incentive for greater private sector investment in expanding production capacity. And so it's a tailored approach. Like I said, not every circumstance will justify that. In many cases, increased competition is a healthy thing. And so we're just looking to create the right balance depending on the conditions of each program and each system.
Excellent. So now that the strategy has been released, what are the next steps for the department to execute the strategy?
Well, that's the hard part. I think that, and as we developed the strategy over the last several months, one thing that we observed was that there are existing authorities that we'll field questions from Congress. Why aren't we taking greater advantage of flexibilities and authorities that have been provided? And I think it comes down to culture change, and I think that will be it's an enormous change management exercise, ensuring that our acquisition workforce and the practitioners throughout have the understanding that we have these flexibilities. We're encouraging their use of those flexibilities and whatever tools are at their disposal to accomplish the mission of delivering capability rapidly. And so I think we're going to be missionaries here on the leadership side of how do we provide the leadership, how do we champion those who are taking calculated risk to accelerate the system, and how do we champion those quick wins to help demonstrate that we truly are in a moment of change, and we need and desire and will work hard to get the buy-in of our entire acquisition workforce to truly make that transition to a more responsive and agile system.
So we've talked a lot about the strategy, the department's efforts in this area. So let me give you an opportunity to say, what would you like to hear from industry? We have a lot of them in the audience. We have a lot attending the events. What actions do you need industry to take in response to the strategy?
Well, I think I mentioned collaborative relationship is critical. We did start the development of this acquisition strategy through the munitions Pathfinder effort, where we had a very concerted effort over the last several months to work through how can we expand the production capacity of critical munitions. And that led us to multiple engagements with industry that was very fruitful in uncovering where there were barriers to entry or where there were burdens that were slowing down the process. We haven't solved all those problems yet, and we aren't done cataloging them for action. But I think constant feedback on where are those areas where the government can improve how we do business, where are greater flexibilities we can provide industry, and then an active participant in the reforms that we're pushing. The Defense Industrial Base Consortium as a forum, as we get stood up to ensure that we've got maximum visibility on what the range of potential solutions are to help us address the warfighter needs, and leveraging that requirements process of, the new flexible requirements process that we hope will provide a broader aperture on what solutions will be considered, and leveraging the innovation of industry to get after problems in ways that we may not have anticipated.
So we have about 2 minutes of your time left. We appreciate you being generous. Any topics we didn't get to? Any closing remarks or thoughts you want to share with the audience?
David, I think you touched on the key points that I wanted to ensure that we addressed. Number one, collaboration with industry is key. Your organization and this division, amongst many divisions, create a tremendous forum to have that conversation. Number two, honest feedback about how we improve the system. This will be the Secretary called it a war of attrition, a war on a culture of compliance and to transition to speed and execution. We've got great patriots in our workforce. We want to empower them to and remove the undue burdens that restrict our ability to move as quickly as we need to maintain pace in the national strategic competition. And I think just bringing those innovative and good ideas into a system that if this goes as we intend, will be much more welcome and opening to a broad range of innovation and entrepreneurship to help us achieve the mission. So thank you, David, for your leadership, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the audience here. I hope it's the first of many discussions as we attempt to tackle what is an enormous change management challenge ahead.
Absolutely. And to the audience, let me just say, for those of you who are looking for follow-on, whether it's on their website, you can come to NDIA. The memos that he's talking about regarding FMS or requirements reform, the transformation strategy, those are all available. For those of you who are part of associations, we probably pushed it out to you by email within an hour or two of it being released. So a lot of material there to read, to understand about where the department's going, but it's a very necessary and an ambitious drive, and so we want to make sure that you can all be properly informed. So let me just close by saying thank you, Secretary Duffy, for taking your time. Thank you for your support of the Defense Industrial Base and the military readiness of the men and women of the armed forces. So ladies and gentlemen, let's please give a round of applause.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to return the microphone back to Vice Admiral Sean Buck, NTSA President.
Appreciate it. Well done. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Vice Admiral Sean Buck, retired Navy. I have the honor and pleasure of serving at the helm of the National Training and Simulation Association. And along with my team, led by Miss Debbie Langelier, we're very honored and privileged to host you here at Itsec 2025. We're very, very appreciative of all of your efforts to be sure that you could come and attend. And as has been said just prior to this, it's very, very important that while you participate and attend, be open-minded, collaborate, and develop your networks and your partnerships and your friendships. They'll last for years to come, and they'll also be of great benefit to the Defense Industrial Base. So, as our tradition at Itsec is, each year we assign lead services, and this year, as you've heard in the opening remarks and the opening ceremonies, our lead services are the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Space Force. And in that regard, we like to start the week with a fireside chat from lead principals of each of the lead services. This morning, we're blessed to have Mr. William Bailey and General James Smith from the Space Force. What I'd like to do, even though we've heard their bio, I'd like to give a brief repeat of some of the highlights of their bio to bring it top of mind as you understand what they're responsible for in their individual portfolios. After that, they'll each have opening remarks to message key aspects of their respective services, strategies, and their road aheads. And then after their opening remarks, we'll go into a question and answer session, and we'll be able to be together in dialogue for the next 45 minutes. So again, representing the United States Air Force is Mr. William Bailey. He's currently performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. His duties include providing expert advice and guidance on Air Force acquisition programs and procurements. Mr. Bailey is responsible for the development and the execution of policies and procedures in support of the operation and improvement of the Air Force acquisition system. He oversees an Air Force research and development, test, production, and modernization program portfolio of over $60 billion annually. Mr. Bailey also serves as the Director and Program Executive Officer of the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office. As the director of this office, he directs selected study development and fielded activities tasked directly by the Department of Defense senior leaders. He retired from active duty in 2015 with more than 26 years of military service as an Air Force acquisition professional, and he was appointed to the Senior Executive Service in 2015. Mr. Bailey, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Representing the United States Space Force is Major General James Smith. Major General Smith is the current commander of Space Training and Readiness Command, headquartered at Patrick Space Force Base in Florida, just over on the coast from here. As commander, he is responsible for preparing the U.S. Space Force and more than 14,000 military and civilian guardians to prevail in competition and conflict through innovation, education, training, doctrine, and test activities. His career has spanned numerous space operations and acquisition positions, including command at the squadron, group, wing, garrison, and field command levels. Welcome, General Smith.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Great to be here.
Mr. Bailey, I turn the stage over to you for your opening remarks.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank the conference as well for giving me an opportunity to come talk to you all today. So in the Air Force, and I was really happy to see the Fireside chat with Secretary Duffy. We are absolutely all in on the work that's happening right now in the acquisition transformation. It's a very exciting time right now when you get a chance to have that kind of alignment from the top leadership all the way down on the need for change, the need for urgent response to warfighter needs. Hey, look, as an RCO guy, that really resonates with me. And specifically inside that messaging where the Secretary got the leadership together, and this was both the acquisition leadership as well, industry leadership as well as government leadership, packed us into a room just so he could look us in the eye and we could really understand what he wanted from us as a community. The idea of acquisition as a warfighting function, I think it's important, but let me unpack that a little bit for you all. When we talk about acquisition as a warfighting function, it is to acknowledge and understand what is the role and how does that impact our success or our failure on the battlefield? How well does it establish deterrence against our adversaries? And for us to really internalize what that means, when we talk about a culture of compliance to a process, et cetera, it almost glosses over the fact that there is real impact out in the field to the decisions that we make or the decisions that we don't make, just based on our perception of what do the rules say we're supposed to do. And when the leadership is there to tell you, I need better outcomes from you, right? It has us go back and take a look at what our approach is, how have we valued things, and look for opportunities to make changes there and more focused in on outcomes, right, than what the process would have us do. It ends up fundamentally changing our outlook on how we make decisions. Another message from the Secretary is for us to take a look at operational risk and acquisition risk and try to strive for a better balance between the two. Because, frequently we'll find ourselves, sitting in a boardroom discussing what might go wrong, what could go wrong, what happens if there's so much concurrency in this schedule. We should probably stretch that out, reduce the concurrency, because I don't want to have a lot of rework. Nowhere in there do we discuss what's happening in the field right now and how is this impacting the warfighter. And you heard Secretary Duffy talk about the trades to be made. When we talk about trading schedule, when we talk about trading cost, when we talk about trading requirements, this is a leadership group that's interested in that as a conversation, as opposed to, I set you down, I give you a baseline, cost, schedule, performance, I wind you up and I let you rip, and you need to stick to that baseline no matter what. It is interesting. A few years ago, I was assigned to the Pentagon, and I was working in acquisition integration. And as part of this, I'm looking at the entirety of acquisition operations across the Air Force. And we took a look at how did we perform in terms of cost, schedule, and technical performance requirements. And we pulled data from all those programs. And stuff shouldn't surprise you. Like if we're going to give out grades, because I'm not sure if I can recall their percentages accurately. Hey, look, when it came to schedule, we got kind of a C, low C. When it came to cost, we got a D. When it came to requirements, we were an A, if not an A+. And of course, we're trained to take a lot of pride in that. Look at that, we met the warfighter's requirements. If you look at it differently and you wonder, what it really said is we will wait any year and we will pay any dollar to get damn near 100% of those requirements, right? And so I start to wonder about what is happening in the field while they're waiting. I think that this is the message that we're getting from them. What if that wasn't a 96 on requirements back to what if it was an 85? But again, it needs to be a trade. There needs to be operational value to the kinds of things we're doing. When you hear this conversation about where we're going in program leadership as a portfolio, it's what's our ability to make trades in that area. Again, for a superior operational outcome. And again, that is back to acquisition is not an administrative function. It is a warfighting function. It is for the acquisition community to really understand, engage, interact with the warfighting community to get what's at stake so that they can come back and make better decisions as a result of that. So again, a very exciting time. There's a lot of alignment. There's alignment not only in the department, but we have frequent conversations with the Hill as well, who are also very interested in supporting the work that we're doing. But let me just shift a little bit and talk about training and simulation in particular. In this area, this is equally as urgent. You heard Rod's comments earlier about the linkage between readiness and training. And what we're seeing now is this just increasing crescendo of a need for a very complex training environment. There will always be the need for individual system training. And the most realistic we can muster has got to be what we bring to the table. What we also ought to consider is the ability to provide integrated training across systems, across services, across domains. And what's our ability to bring the warfighters together, give them an environment where they can come through and not only provide training, but also flexible enough for them to develop new tactics, for them to develop better planning. As we take a look at the number of systems we're fielding across all those services, hey, how do we, it is infeasible to impractical for us to presume that we'll be able to get all those systems together, dedicated personnel, et cetera, in an open air environment, for lack of a better expression. But the premium on that, the ones that are really experts at employing cross-domain capabilities, coordinating those effects, cycling them again and again over time, they will be dominant on the battlefield. And as an acquirer, I need to figure out, hey, look, how do I patch these systems together? How do I integrate them easily, seamlessly, knowing that the capabilities behind them are their own acquisition programs with their own variability in terms of what's happening on that program today, and then how do I make sure that system is flexible enough to ingest these changes? A lot has been talked about open architectures. As an RCO guy, we've been working open architectures for a long time. One of the things that we've learned over the years is there are two communities who need to, you can come up with a technical solution for the architecture, you can develop a standard and do these things, but there are two crowds, the test crowd and the training crowd, that need to come along too. Because we're going to reset their expectations on how fast we can change a configuration. In the past, we would be happy if we would change a configuration every couple of years. And now we have the capacity to change it every couple of months, some cases every couple of weeks. What does that mean for the training community while we're doing that? Again, that kind of flexibility is essential to dominate our adversaries. We've got to back that up with making sure that the warfighter is ready to employ those things competently and effectively. So again, I'm looking forward to the conversation this morning. There are a lot of very exciting things to talk about, so thank you.
Sir, that fidelity and those specifics were very, very helpful to this audience. Thank you for your remarks. General Smith?
Yeah, thanks, Admiral Buck, and thanks for having me here this morning. This is my first Itsec. They made sure to point that out. When you see me later with my badge on, it's got a ribbon that says first time. So, but I'm excited to be here and to have this conversation. Also excited to be able to share the stage with our Department of the Air Force partner and our U.S. Air Force partner. A couple things that I think you can get from this panel as we look at just the symbolism of us both being up here. One, acquisition background, more of an operations background. I think sometimes we view those as two different things. I appreciate the fact that we talk about acquisition being a warfighting function, and really at the end of the day, it's all about driving that operational dominance. So that's one takeaway. And the other is, as a Space Force, we are unsuccessful without the partnership of our Air Force brothers and sisters and the support they provide us. So pleasure to share the stage with our Air Force brother as well. A couple points, and I know we want to have time for questions, so I'll just make 3 quick points in my introductory remarks. One, I really appreciate the theme of the conference, optimizing training before a purpose. What's the outcome? Why are we optimizing training? And it's to drive operational dominance, and we need to remember that in everything that we do. The Secretary of War talks about outcomes over processes. We talk in STARCOM a lot about what are the outcomes that we're trying to drive. The outcome at the end of the day is we have to have a joint force that can win. And that's what we need to remember as we look at the training, simulations, and everything else we'll talk about in this conference. The other 2 quick points I just want to make as introductory remarks. We're coming up on our 6th Air Force birthday, or Space Force birthday. You can see it's fresh enough. I still refer to myself as Air Force, having spent 20 plus years in the Air Force. But our 6th birthday here in the middle of December, I think there's still knowledge that can be shared about what the Space Force is. So as was mentioned by Colonel Klopstein earlier, as you see Guardians out here throughout this week, please take the time to talk to them, get to understand what we do as an Air Force. He referenced the mission, secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space. Fundamentally, at the end of the day, we're here in order to ensure we have operational dominance as a joint force, and the space systems and capabilities and efforts that we provide are critical to that mission for our nation. And then the third point I just want to highlight was STARCOM. As was mentioned, it's just down the road, Space Training and Readiness Command, one of our 3 field commands in the United States Space Force. We are specifically focused on the training and readiness aspects to help ensure our forces are combat credible and that we provide that operational dominance. So look forward. One of the things you may think, hey, the Space Force, there's only 24 generals or 20 plus generals. Maybe the Air Space Force just sent General Smith because he's just down the road and that was the easiest option. As Corey mentions, actually, it was a great fit, and we're happy to be here in the Florida area because of the link to the simulation community, some of our joint brothers and sisters that also share this space. So excited to be here for the first time, excited to have this conversation, and excited over the next couple of days to have these conversations and to continue some of the dialogue this morning. So thanks, Admiral Buck, and back to you.
Thank you, General. I was in the convention center and down on the exhibit floor yesterday, and I saw a lot of Guardians. So it's good to see them. I did not get to engage in conversation yet with them, but we will follow your direction and get to know them. Mr. Bailey, I'll start the questions with you, if I may. We have a wealth of ingenuity in the United States. Many small groups, small companies, individuals, they have much to offer to the Department of War. How are your services ensuring that you can access innovation from any company, any organization, including our international partners, be it a complete training system, a line of code, or individual part manufacturing?
That is a great question. One of the interesting observations is if you take a look at centers of innovation, right? There is a massive center of innovation here in the United States, and it does not reside in the Pentagon. That was a little bit of a shock to me and my colleagues, but it was interesting because I was down in Austin talking to a group down there, and it is just phenomenal to see and engage with just dozens of small companies and how professional they were and how focused they were about not only their technology but their business model, et cetera. It is inspiring, and then it is also invigorating to the point of, hey, how do we make better access of this? One of the more frustrating thoughts in my head is, I wonder if my adversary has better access to this than I do. That is unacceptable. So you'll see that we go back and take a look at what Secretary Duffy talked about in terms of barriers to entry. And what do we look at? And there has been concerted effort in our contracting community to take a look at the tools we bring to bear, in our financial management community in terms of, hey, what kind of overhead are we projecting out on companies we do business with? In our technical community, to take a look at what are the opportunities for participation outside of delivering the entire weapon system by itself. So just to go back and take a look. And so out of that, the contracting community has worked extensively beyond simple FAR Part 15 approaches, Part 16 approaches, other transactional agreements, commercial offerings, to open up the trade space for how we can engage with any particular offerer out there or performer out there, any company. In terms of, and same thing too, in looking at what kind of cost accounting standards are required. Hey, how do we establish fair and reasonable? Again, far more flexible approaches are being brought to the table. In the technical community, taking a look at open architectures, modular software. In the past, if you wanted to write a mode for the radar in a fighter aircraft, you had to be part of the company that produced the entire airplane, that had to have the radar in it, that had to have the software modes developed by the company. When we take a look at modular software, it does create the opportunity for more direct engagement. So when in our collaborative combat aircraft program, they introduced a government reference architecture that industry could come and engage with and figure out, hey, how do I integrate into this architecture? And there are over 30 performers supporting that program, 10 of which are what we would consider to be non-traditional offerers in that space. It's important for us, again, to find ways to come meet industry where they are, because again, center of innovation does not exist in the middle of that Pentagon, and we are changing our outlook, we are changing our approaches and our practices in order to get out there and engage with you.
As a follow-on question to you, we were told by Secretary that that we should read all of the existing documents that have been hung on websites? NDIA has them hung, NTSA has those documents hung. Will we find a lot of specificity on the burial removals and initiatives like that for the small companies to be able to get better access?
You will see that. You'll see that, and some of that message is for industry, and some of that messaging is directly to the leadership in the government, is for us to lean in, look for those opportunities, take those chances, to not sit back when we think we're missing opportunities, and reach out and engage with industry and find ways to incorporate their work. So a short answer is yes. And like I said, I think that message is not only for industry to absorb, but also for the government acquisition workforce.
Thank you. General Smith, let's start at the strategic level with the Space Force. When we talk about operational dominance, what does that mean in the context of the space domain, and why is space superiority so central to the Joint Force today?
Sure, yeah, important question. Thanks for asking. The answer to this question is really the reason you have any service. You have a service because you have a domain in which you have interests, and you need to be able to secure that domain or secure your interest in that domain. And so if you may argue, we've had space and operations in space for decades. Why did we need a service in the recent past, 6 years ago? And this stems to the reliance that we had created on the domain and the threats that then were present in the domain. So as we as a nation moved from massing of fires to precision fires, we did that by our reliance on capabilities from space. Our ability to communicate relied on space capabilities. Our ability to obtain intelligence relied on space capabilities. Our ability to navigate relied on space capabilities. You can go down the list of joint missions, and it's difficult to come up with a joint mission that does not rely on a space capability or have a link to space in some fashion. Obviously, if I'm an adversary or someone that wants to be prepared to target or threaten U.S. interests, I'm therefore going to attack or develop ways to get after that link in the joint warfighting chain. And so that's what we've seen adversaries do. They've come up with ideas, plans, activities, systems that can target and weaken our space systems or those links in that chain. And so we created a service specifically to focus on space superiority that can help us secure our nation's interests in, from, and to space as captured in our mission statement. And so that's what we focus on every day at STARCOM and in the Space Force, is how can we create those operational effects that allow us to secure those interests, and ultimately, not space for space's sake, but to help the Joint Force be effective.
It's very helpful to continue to hear this explained so all of us understand exactly what the Space Force is responsible for, what you're pursuing, and how then they can engage and help you achieve that mission and that superiority. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Bailey, in a fiscally constrained environment, between acquisition transformation efforts and the U.S. Space Force and U.S. Air Force priorities, where do trainers and simulators lay in that world?
I get a sense of some sensitivity in the nature of the question.
Yes, there is.
Somebody just, is there a, yeah, anyway, I won't have any fun with it, but we're always in a constrained environment at the program level. And so there's always pressure on the resources that have been provided to us. As we take a look at the alignment from the leadership, whether it's the premium on lethality, clear message coming from the secretary on down. Rod quoted General Wilsbach, the chief, in terms of the importance of us being ready to fight. This resides at the very center of that activity. Not only for the warfighter to be ready to employ their own weapon system, but like the comments I made earlier, which is the premium on being able to integrate that into a larger mission force, and knowing that larger mission force, we should expect it to be very complex. We should expect it to be very persistent and very demanding. So I don't know that we come out of this in terms of priority ranking 1 to 10. When you hear the comments about mission outcomes and the need for judgment, I think you see layers and layers of leaders acknowledging and respecting the role that this plays in their mission outcome. So, case in point, B-21 program. As we are taking a look at how we are designing, building, testing, producing a B-21, there is certainly a significant level of resources going against it. But I also know that my job isn't done just when I park X number of bombers on a ramp, over at Whiteman or Dias. It's after I have trained and ready pilots, trained and ready maintainers, mission planners, etc. That is a real capability. Without it, it is a pile of steel on a ramp. So I think when we talk about the focus on mission outcomes, this is absolutely part of that mission outcome. Again, without it, it's just a pile of metal.
Training the operators, training the maintainers, making sure that they can take not that pile of metal, but that phenomenal capability and take it to war and win if needed.
Absolutely.
So I will throw in a comment. The genesis of that question was exactly what you articulated up front. As a careerist in the Navy, quite often we would see, unfortunately, the personnel budgets to be a quick source of money and a bill payer, but also the world of training as a bill payer. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting to hear that we accept that, we realize that's happened in the past, and we need to be sure that training is a very big part of positive outcomes.
All right.
So General Smith, back over to you. The Space Force recently released a vector in which the Chief Space Officer felt it was important to provide your guardians with a vector for the most essential elements of our work. What direction is the service heading, and what elements are the most critical to achieving dominance in a contested space domain?
Yeah, thanks, Admiral Buck. So I brought a visual aid to help have this conversation. But
show and tell.
Show and tell. You can go and you can Google Space Force Vector, and you can find this document released in the last month by our Chief of Space Operations. And it does exactly what you just described. It outlines the direction the Space Force is headed. And if you look in the intro that General Saltzman talks about, he specifically called it a vector. It's not a strategy. It doesn't necessarily outline ends, ways, and means, but it outlines the direction that we're trying to go as a service. It's centered on two primary groups of things that I'll quickly talk about. One is the theory of competitive endurance. This is the theory that General Saltzman has centered his time as our service chief around, and it talks about how we will be successful in the space domain in this context of space superiority. Three aspects to that. The first is you got to avoid operational surprise, so we're working to build a service to understand what's going on in the domain and to train guardians so they can do that mission. The next is to deny first mover advantage. So you think about the space domain, it was primarily undefended, and your ability to attack a system as a first mover could have significant advantage in a traditional sense. I like to think of this as kind of a tic-tac-toe board. If you have a 2x2 tic-tac-toe board, the first person to put a symbol is always going to win. 3x3, likely if you go first, you might win. If you can become more resilient and have more nodes on your tic-tac-toe board, you deny and weaken the first mover advantage. So there's a lot of work that we're doing there. And the third is adversaries are using their space capabilities in order to weaken the joint force or to target the joint force. And so we need to be able to be responsible in counter space campaigning in order to minimize the effects that they can have and protect our joint brothers and sisters in the missions that they do. So that's the theory of competitive endurance, and everything else that we do and that is outlined in this document and the vector that General Saltzman has laid out aligns to those principles. And then the rest of the document gets after the four aspects that any service does. You design a force, you develop a force, you employ a force and you generate a force. Said those backwards. You generate and then you employ. And so he outlines where we're headed, and I would encourage all of you that are interested in knowing where the Space Force is going, how you can partner, how you can help. He outlines specific things in each of those areas. For example, in the force development, which is where STARCOM focuses day to day, there's a lot of work that we're putting to train and develop guardians that are guardians and not just airmen or soldiers that came over from another service and bring important capabilities, but we need to then map and overlay on top of them the capabilities that they had, guardian-specific capabilities that can get after space superiority. So that's some of the tasks that he talks about in the document. At the end of the day, though, it all comes back to that theory of competitive endurance and what it will take in a domain that you can't secure. You can never achieve, hey, I fully own the space domain, which is never our goal, but how can we manage the space domain in a way that allows us to secure our interests and preserves our ability as a joint force to operate?
Well, I would imagine then that we should commend the audience to get a hold of that vector, read that, and further understand how they can inject back into your force.
We will not be able to execute anything in this vector on our own and need the partnership of allies, partners, and industry. So yes, please, would encourage you to take a look.
Very well, thank you, sir. Mr. Bailey, this next question is going to be a somewhat of a short question, but I'd like to add a couple of asks in it with some specifics if we can.
Okay.
What should the members of our audience, especially members of the Department of War, do to ensure the transformation to the warfighter acquisition system that it empowers acquirers, that's a hard word for me to say, to deliver capability that will deter or defeat the adversary? So with that, maybe to get to some specifics, we heard Secretary Duffy talk about this. As we understand it, we're going to transition from a cost schedule performance mindset and culture to an operational outcomes mindset. And then with that in mind, could you give us a few efforts that are specific to PEO training and modeling in SIM, like modernizing systems engineering, which you both have touched on already a little bit?
Sure.
It's a complete culture shift.
It is a culture shift, and I think we shouldn't shy away from that aspect of the conversation. Culture change is difficult to go do, but I also believe firmly that there is no special process, there is no special meeting or board that we haven't thought of yet that's going to change how we've been producing and delivering capability over time. There isn't. I think I was over at DAU, and they had taken a golf ball and written Goldwater Nichols on it. And then subsequently, every piece of legislation that came out on acquisition reform, they would write it on it, they'd put a Band-Aid on that, because it's a Band-Aid on a problem, they put it on the golf ball. And when I was there, they brought it out, and it was about the size of a volleyball. Whoa. So the thought there is, hey guys, it's not for want of a process, it's not for want of a board or a panel. It has to be absorbed at the individual level. Everyone from the service acquisition executive all the way down to the people on the line. The program managers, the engineers, the financial managers, the contracting officers, the buyers, the security officer, the range of people, the loggies that it takes to bring a capability online. And they've got to be thinking about that mission outcome and what I'm doing and how does that relate to having, is this the smart move? Because in the past, we were far too beholden to a business deal that was set up potentially years ago. And these programs are not wind-up toys, where we crank it up, we set that acquisition strategy, and boom, we let it go and say, I'll see you in 10 years, and when I come back, I'm sure, the flight line will be arrayed with wonderful capability, I am sure. That's not how programs happen. And it's to let those people understand that they have a real responsibility to not let that go off a cliff, right? Hey, look, and if the process is having you march off a cliff, I'm here to tell you, stop marching, right? Let's make the change. Let's get a better outcome going. And for the acquisition community out there on the government side, we do need to accept the fact that hey, look, we're going to go back and we're going to change things. We're going to use our judgment to set up a better deal that's going to get us what we want. There's a recent example I know with Rod. We were looking at what was going on in the T7 program, and things were really not working out well. And the entire time, Rod also knew that he was supporting a T-38 program out there that was doing its best to hold availability rates up. That aircraft has been around for decades and decades. And also understanding from the warfighter, hey, when I'm done with T-38 training and then I'm going to turn around and do F-35, the increasing gap that was forming between the end of pilot training and the beginning of a weapon system qual, right? What are we going to do in there? And in that case, put together a team to go in and figure out how do we change this arrangement so that we can get some capability out. We partnered with Air Education and Training Command to go figure out what do you guys have to have right now that's going to make a difference in the problem that we're showing you. And we made real changes. We made real changes with the contractor. We made real changes on the program itself in order to go do that. And the program is now making progress where in the past, back to my earlier example, we were working on getting an A in requirements while we were quickly working our way into a D and maybe even an F on cost and schedule. So it's to let people know you're responsible for that. Again, coming back to me saying, hey, Bill, I totally complied with all statutes and instructions and regulations. Aren't you happy? I'm not, right? So the message out there to the community is be ready to make changes. If it doesn't look good to you, then it's not good. Anyway, more on that, I'm sure.
So that golf ball went to that volleyball size from unintended consequences that forced fixes, quick fixes, and they just kept coming and coming and coming.
You got it. And that's why, again, back to there are things like when we talk about the, as we're talking about making those trades, and I'll go back to the example with Rod, hey, what kind of authority does he need to have in order to be able to make that trade, right? When it comes to requirements. Hey, how much of that does he need to have in order to seize that opportunity? How does he do that responsibly? Financially, how does he move the resources there in order to support the change he wants to make? These are all things that we are going to be working out with the requirements community as they're in the middle of their big change, as well as the financial community in terms of, hey, how do we do that? And what we've recognized is that needs to happen at a more operational level than, again, having it go all the way back to the Pentagon. Because there'll be countless layers of people in there who can say no, or that's a lot of risk, I'm not sure that might work out. No, we have to get that authority down to the place where they can seize the opportunities. So again, that's where it's I don't need another Band-Aid. I need to make sure the authorities are located where they can do the most good and address the culture. Let those people know they all play a role in a better outcome.
As I understand it, that's one of the most powerful things of this transformation is empowering at a lower level to make those changes to be quicker. It's awesome. Look forward to that. General, I'm gonna take you away from that strategic level, and I'm gonna take you into this audience at the tactical level. This is Itsec.
Yep.
All those people out there in the training and simulation community. What does the Space Force need from its training and test ecosystem to achieve operational dominance? And then how does Colonel Klopstein's command OTTI deliver that?
Yeah, thanks, and I'm glad 45 minutes goes quick. We're coming up here on the end, but yes, I'm glad we had a chance to get from the strategic down to some of the applicability to this session. So STARCOM has two responsibilities primarily: guarding development and validation of our capabilities. And we bring all that together to create combat credible forces. Both on the training side and the test or validation side, we need, as a service, simulation capabilities to create a test and training infrastructure. OTTI is what we call it, that Colonel Klopstein runs and acquires for us in order to execute both training, so Guardians, on the worst day of their life have already executed and rehearsed and seen everything that they're going to see, and it's just recreating what they've already been trained to in simulations. Or when we take training or test capabilities, it's very difficult in the test domain, or sorry, in the space domain, to do a live fire test and create a bunch of debris and those kind of things. And so we need simulation capabilities in that arena as well. So at the end of the day, we can't do our mission as STARCOM, we can't do our mission as Space Force without an operational test and training infrastructure, which is built on modeling and simulation. So I look forward to, I'm on a couple more panels throughout the course of the next 2 days. I look forward to being able to have more dialogue and discussion along those lines. But thanks for this fireside chat this morning, and really look forward. The other thing I'll say is we can't do that without a partnership. So we need that operational test and training infrastructure. Space Systems Command with Colonel Klopstein is a great partner, but also the partnership that we need from all of you, both industry and other parts of the government. So look forward to more conversations on the floor and other places. And thanks for the opportunity to be part of this chat this morning.
Thank you, General. Mr. Bailey, take us home.
All right. Well, hey, I'd like to, again, thank you very much for the opportunity today. This is a pretty fantastic forum and a very, very special conference. So if I think about final thoughts here, maybe break it out. In talking to industry and academia, you heard from Secretary Duffy as well. This is a time where we need to collaborate, and that means working together. I've talked through a number of places where we're making changes to improve our accessibility, and we're putting premiums on the level at which we engage. You heard my own philosophy regarding the center of innovation and the need for us to get out there. Now, for you all, we need you to come to the table and collaborate with us. You need to bring to the table all your expertise, all your own investment. You heard Secretary Duffy hit on it there. Some of our models were probably not effective in bringing out the best in industry if we're underwriting all the investment here, right? It just lends itself to a relationship between you and us that is far too dependent and stifles innovation. So just to be clear, hey, look, we need you at the table to collaborate with us, which means we need you to bring everything you can to bear to that table. And again, we're doing as much as we can to make ourselves easier to access, easier to work with, more flexible once we set up those arrangements. Now to the government side. I appreciate the opportunity to talk very candidly about the need for a culture change. Acquisition is a warfighting function, right? The need for us to view ourselves differently in the work that we do and the consequences that we do, right? Hey, look, we're not a pack of shoe clerks. Not that I have anything against shoe clerks. It's consequences of failure for them are not nearly as high as they are for you. So think about that. Action as well as your inaction. If you're worried about getting yelled at, then think about your operational counterpart. They're not getting yelled at, they're getting shot at, right? So it's time for us to take our jobs as deadly seriously as our operational counterparts and to not sit still and watch bad things happen. You have a real responsibility to make those changes and shoot for a better operational outcome. And making those changes, hey, look, from the leadership on down, I'm telling you, that's what we're going to expect to see. And it's not going to be nice and clean, and trades are going to have to be made. There's going to be regrets, et cetera. But you staying focused in on what that superior operational outcome is the thing we're counting on.
Thank you, gentlemen. We greatly appreciate both of you participating. I'd like, in front of the bosses, I'd like to give a shout out to the service executives and the service principals of the U.S. Space Force and the U.S. Air Force that we work with on a daily basis to be able to create the appropriate content for a big forum like Itsec and make it value added for everyone who chooses to come. So to the Air Force and Space Force team, thank you. It's an honor to be teammates with you, and I appreciate all the effort that you've put in for the last year. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks. That was real good. So I know what the right answer is. I'm over 50, and many of you are also. We need a break. So I invite you to take a break outside of the ballroom here, and please promptly be back in your seats ready to listen at 10 after. We're going to have our industry keynote by the SAIC principal here, and we all need to hear that keynote speech. So please go take a break.